So before we actually get into it, how was your keynote speech?
My gosh, I was so nervous,
Yeah.
and I'm a procrastinator, right? So of course I didn't finish my PowerPoint until like the morning up.
Me too.
And then because you have to hop on a little bit earlier so we could practice the techie
Yeah, yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
I was struggling and then my screen went black and it was
Oh
like
God.
I was like, but everything really worked out well. And a lot of people were like, oh my God, this is great. Cause a lot of people are nervous to come on social media. But it was so much fun because I used a lot of my TikToks to show how I was basically it's like BST, right? Like this is how I use TikTok. This is what I did. This is why I did it and how you can do it too. So it was a lot of fun and exciting.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Were there a lot of people there?
So like 420-ish people enrolled.
Oh my gosh.
And that was the first time I hosted a event on Behavior Live. So I wasn't sure like the back end of thing, but you could see how many people were registered. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so you get to see, like, I have an event that's going to be coming up in June with Motivity, and I can just every day, the number of people just keeps going up. And it's cool. It's really like cool to see on the back end. It's very addictive. It's like, it is like social media though. It's like very addicting where you're like, I want to see how many people have registered.
It's like
Uh,
receiving likes. It's like, oh, it's 100. It's like, oh, snap.
yeah, it's so exciting. And it's really cool because that kind of thing, like 400 something registered, and maybe not everybody was there, but all those people are going to see it at some point, and then it's going to live in perpetuity forever on Behavior Live. So all these other people are going to have an opportunity to purchase it or watch it, which I think is just really cool for you and like for our community and for people to start learning about all these other ways that ABA can be applied.
I know so many people, a couple of people shared like, oh, I wasn't able to catch it live. And they shared a screenshot of them watching the replay. I know it was so cool. I loved it.
I
I'm
know
like,
I
oh,
need to watch
I
it.
gotta do another one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm the same way though, where like I'm always finishing presentations like in the last minute. And that's my whole vibe is like, I'm just going to get up here and I'm going to see what the audience energy is. And I'm going to see what my energy is. And we're going to go and it's going to look different every single time because it really depends on what happened to me in the last week and what my mood is and like all of these pieces and how well I put it together. But I feel like I'm very, as I don't know about you, but like I feel like I have to be everything I do on the fly.
Yeah, I know.
And yeah, so I'm just very like used to being like, I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna get up on the stage and I'm gonna figure it out because I'm not gonna stand there for an hour.
I know. You know how you can put like notes? And that's another thing. I'm not really
Yeah.
tech. So, it's like you click one and it's the same slide, but it transitions because
Yeah,
of the
yeah, yeah.
me, I just slap everything on one slide. So I remember to tack everything at the moment that I remember to recall. But I remember he was like, oh, do you have any notes? I'm like, no, because I wouldn't know how to leverage reading notes. I can't. I just gotta be on the fly, like you said. This is my vibe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I do need the notes because I'll like write to myself little things that I want to make sure I say that I didn't want to clutter the slide. And then sometimes you can see me being like, hold on, guys, I'm just checking. Let me just see. Have I seen all my notes? Right. I did have past Nicole did have a good idea here, but it is what it is. I don't know. I maybe one day I'll get to being like a polished speaker, but I also feel like I have fun when I speak and people like that energy. So
Yeah. I love when you talk. You got a good flow.
yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Appreciate that. I try. I feel like I like public speaking a lot. So here we are, public speaking.
Boom, boom. Now we're gonna promote people to start podcasts.
Yes, that's the goal, maybe. Is that the goal? I don't know if it is.
What we want to do is get all this information out there for you guys. So whether
Yes.
it's influencing podcasts, whatever, we're gonna get
Yep.
it out there.
Yep. Empower people to figure out what they love to do.
And what's like best fitting for their vibe. That was another thing
Yes.
I talked about too. It's like you are your brand. So
Yes.
represent yourself how you want to carry yourself, the colors, everything is all representation of you. And like you will form your own community that resonates with it. It's like you're not for
It's
everybody, but you have a community out there.
yes, it's so true. And I think for so long I didn't necessarily feel that way. And the more authentic I am to who I am, the more people I find that align with my values, which like I guess actually makes a lot of sense because if what I'm putting out there is inauthentic, then I'm getting the people are reflecting back to I'm finding the people who match the inauthenticity.
Yep.
Anyway, we should introduce ourselves and then
We're professional yappers if you haven't caught on.
yeah, we just record our own conversations because we feel like they're of benefit. I learn so much when we talk. So yeah.
Okay, you want to go first?
I'm Nicole Stewart. I'm a BCBA and special education certified special education teacher, and I am a mom to two wonderful boys who have more energy than I ever knew possible. But I love them immensely, and they're just amazing creatures. And I do a whole number of things that we're going to learn about throughout this journey on this podcast with Christina, and I'm just very excited to be here.
So I am Christina Torres. I'm a BCBA here in Connecticut, so we're both on the East Coast. I've been in the field since 2014. I've worked in the home, the clinic, the school, the community. I've held titles like life skills coach, community mentor, ABA therapist. I'm also a mom to a 2.5-year-old. Well, she's going to be 3 soon. She was a former NICU mama. I'm a NICU mama. So my daughter was 25 weeks and we spent so long in a NICU, and I'm so passionate about the science because I use this to help me get through the NICU, but also to help shape her language and just being a parent in general. So she was my motivation for me to go independent. So that's why I'm here today to empower
Aw.
communities and to support the future leaders of our field.
That's such a good point. It's like, what is our motivation to be here? But I think, our goal for this podcast is, we're going to see where it takes us. Christina and I are on a journey ourselves. And I would guess that the mission of this podcast is going to evolve as we evolve and grow. But right now, our goal is we really want to empower parents, professionals, people interested in our field to better understand ABA, because both of us feel so, so, so passionate about the ABA field and also recognize the flaws and the concerns and the places where ABA gets stuck, and want to help bring the energy that we have into this field so that we can inspire other people to bring their energy to and have these conversations, these honest, open, hard conversations that hopefully reinforce people's behavior to get more interested in ABA, whether it's as a parent or a professional or a teacher or whoever working in alignment with ABA or working with people with ABA. And we know there's a lot of people out there who've had not so positive experiences with ABA. And we're here to help shape that over
Yeah.
time. Yeah. Towards more positivity.
And we're deciding to start a podcast name too, because Nicole and we collaborate together. We're also entrepreneurs. And that's another thing. Like, I reached out to Nicole when I decided to go independent because I literally Googled
It's so funny.
BAs, and Nicole and like one other guy literally were the only people that popped up. And I inserted myself and I told her, "Hi, Nicole here. My name is Christina Torres. I'm in Connecticut. I'm on my way to becoming independent. If you have an opportunity to speak, I would love a chance to kind of like pick your brain." And she was open to talking to me. And I'm like, "Oh my God, how exciting." And it was actually the day before her like mini ADHD conference day. So Nicole specializes in ADHD, and she took the time to meet with me before her long day event, which I also attended. So to make a long story short, fast forward a year, now we collaborated with that same ADHD, and we created the ADHD exchange as it paired it with my platform as well. So then it just evolved into like, oh my goodness, we're business partners, and like we should start a podcast because we go live often to really advocate for ADHD. Nicole's son have ADHD.
Yep.
I also have ADHD, and she possibly has ADHD. So,
Yeah.
and also too,
Don't have a diagnosis, but
ADHD is a common
yeah.
comorbidity, right? And it's like we want to better understand it, and we wanted to provide mentorship and guidance for those in our community to really understand how to support our learners, but also ourselves. So to make a long story short, here we are now with our reinforcing conversations, shaping better behavior one conversation at a time. So that's really our aim, is to really empower, support, and bring perspectives from a different like insight and stuff to, better prepare you guys to shape your behaviors one way or the other.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also as we were putting this together, one of the things that really stuck out to me was thinking about like how there's so many amazing ABA podcasts out there already. There's a lot that exists. And so what are we going to do that maybe is different than what other people are already doing? And I think our goal is to be accessible, to help make ABA accessible to people outside of ABA and help BCBAs or other ABA professionals feel empowered to increase their own accessibility to people outside of ABA. So a lot of like our goal is eventually to be able to offer CEUs and for our content to be offered as unrestricted hours for people who are in field work and things like that. So we very much want to appeal to people in the field, but we also want to create this space where parents can come and talk, and speech therapists and occupational therapists, and we can learn from all these other providers to help support, this stronger development of ABA and this stronger mission of ABA that maybe we haven't personally seen as much exploration out of connecting ABA to the outside of the field. And so, that I think is a big piece too, is trying to make this content accessible, whether you're a professional in the field and have been for 20 years, or you are a parent whose child was newly diagnosed and you were like, what do I know about ABA? And I'm going to Google it and I'm going to find these ladies and I'm going to listen to their podcast. That's the goal.
And piggybacking off of that, it's a multidisciplinary team. And that's what we really want to push, guys, because in our field, we typically work with learners that have autism, but we have to collaborate with everyone that's a part of their team. So we want to model that behavior. We want to have other experts share their insight and their perspective so that we can have a better understanding how everyone could collaboratively come together to really support everybody's learner. Which gets me so excited because I love like becoming wiser and like, oh, what's your take on this?
I know, me too.
What is your theory? Like, you know what I mean? It's like, let's have these conversations. And it's so needed. And also too, guys, like we're in the digital era. We are in a position to really help like project all this information to the masses, especially for those people that don't have resources or may not be able to have services at home. So that's another reason why we're really pushing for all this amazing content and collaboration to really bring all this insight for you guys.
Yes. And I think like one of my missions, I'm on the board of the Association for Science and Autism Treatment, and their website is so science-based and really helps dispel a lot of myths. And I think that their mission has really inspired me to extend my professional practice to ensuring, and because I think my practice extends outside of autism to ADHD, to anxiety, to businesses, to staff management, all of these other places. And you work in digital marketing, and there's people who do exercise, and there's just so many ways that ABA can be applied and utilized. And we want to highlight all of that. And we want to embrace all corners of ABA, good, bad, messy, awesome, all the different pieces, and go from clinical to practice to research and back again. And I think this is probably a good transition because today we wanted to focus on what is ABA and what do we do as BCBAs. And this is particularly, for our professionals in the audience. This is for you guys to help explain what you do all day and help understand, I know how many times, Christina, have you been asked like, so what do you do? What's your job? And you're like, well, I don't even know where to start.
No, I know where to start because I'm trying to empower you guys to stop saying, I just work with kids. No, we do way more than that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. I'm always like, I don't know. And then for anybody who's not familiar with ABA, we want to give you that foundational knowledge so that all the stuff that we're talking about makes sense over time. And our goal is like not to be speaking in the ABA language, but sometimes that's going to come up. Yeah, we want to be able to go over that.
Yeah, the learning objectives, right? That's what we're going over.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
All right. So being able to explain our jobs and responsibilities, which Nicole mentioned, jargon free, which is my favorite, especially like on the fly of like, so I'm on social media, guys, and I go live all the time. So when I try to explain things, I try so hard not to use our language, but I try to like paint a picture of the concept of something. And I feel like that's why a lot of people resonate with the content that I share because it makes it so relatable, and I had a BCBA reach out to me because she also had ADHD, and she mentioned, like she doesn't feel like she's kind of up to par with all the jargon in our field, like understanding all the huge language and the terms. So she was kind of feeling like a little like kind of doubting herself. And I was explaining to her, I'm like, listen, our brains are very unique and we're not supposed to be talking in all this jargon term. We're actually supposed to be explaining the terms and concepts for our staff and parents to be able to actually understand and know how to apply it. And she was like, I know. And I was like, yeah, so you shouldn't be talking in like differential reinforcement type of terms. You should just be explaining what we should be reinforcing and what we shouldn't be taught, like bringing notice to. And so she needed to hear that because she was kind of doubting herself because of like, not having mastery criteria of all the terms, which is exactly why we got to disseminate our science. Behavior analysts will be able to define their scope of practice.
So the goal is after this podcast, you're going to feel clearer about what you do and be able to say more than just, well, I work with kids or I work with kids with autism.
And then behavior analysts will learn about options for practice and when to seek support.
Yep. And so those are our learning objectives, so that we're able to offer CEUs to behavior analysts and, parents, other professionals. Our goal is that you're walking away with a deeper understanding of what ABA is, maybe outside of the one or two experiences that you've had, and that we give you some direction on where to find quality ABA providers or services or people to collaborate with.
Resources too.
Yes, resources.
And guys, one of the other things that we're going to be really pushing is the social media aspect. So follow us on Instagram, on YouTube, our podcast at Reinforcing Conversations. And especially on Instagram, because we're going to be having like polls and stuff, because part of our podcast is we want to include you. You guys we're all here. We're all sharing the same community and we want to have your insights so we could have these conversations. So we'll be posting, questionnaires and like asking you guys to comment, feedback, on topics you like to discuss, or like, hey, how do you describe yourself as a BCBA? And tag us in your videos. And that's just going to be a part to include all of us together as a whole and also make it a lot more fun.
Yes. Because also, like, we could listen to each other talk the whole time, but we're not going to learn as much if we don't hear from everyone else. And the goal is for us to make a community and create this space where everybody has their voice and opinion, and we're all learning from each other.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think the first part is really understanding, like, whenever I start talking about ABA, obviously, when I talk to a parent about ABA, I'm not going to be like, well, let me tell you what the BACB is and what BCBA stands for. But I know I'm always hesitant to say I'm a BCBA unless somebody's in the field, because most people are not going to know what the heck those letters stand for. Yeah. They're like a BC, what? And then like, I remember I had somebody I met a few years ago who was like, oh, you're a behavior analyst? Are you analyzing my behavior right now? I was like, I don't analyze your behavior. I have no idea what you're doing. You look like you're shopping at a store. I don't know. And so I think that there's a piece too where our field is so new, right? The BACB was just founded in 1998. And so our field feels really new and I think feels very, I say not as legitimate. Like, what's the word I'm looking for?
It's like up and coming. It's evolving and it's evolving quickly, guys. All right. We have 75,000 BCBAs. And within the last 5 years, we've gained half of them.
Yeah.
And we have over 200,000 RBTs.
Yeah. So for non-ABA people listening, a BCBA is a board certified behavior analyst and an RBT is a registered behavior technician. And these are all certifications that come from the BACB, which is the Behavior Analyst Certification Board. And they themselves have to have a certifying body overseeing them. And I think that that's like a piece that people don't always know, is that it's not just like these random people who are like, we're going to decide what it takes to be a behavior analyst. Like, they actually have somebody who oversees whether or not their requirements are rigorous enough to meet national certification. And so it's legitimate. There is a whole process. The process has continued to evolve. So when I was in field work, 2011 and 12, I just had to do 1,500 hours of field work, and 75 hours of that had to be meeting with my supervisor. And that was it. Those were the requirements. And since then, they've continued to increase the requirements without going into all of the details on how that progression has happened. It continues to get more and more rigorous because the field keeps growing and they want to make sure that people are prepared to be behavior analysts, because once you pass the test, you can practice on your own. And I think that that's different from a lot of other human service fields where, in speech therapy, they have to do a year after they graduate and become certified, where they do a clinical fellowship. And doctors do an internship and a residency, and social workers have to be supervised before they can get their license switches to like an independent license. So I think it is a little different than other fields. And so there's a lot more pressure to make sure, like, I know I feel a lot of pressure to make sure that people know what they're doing by the end of field work,
Yeah.
because once you pass the test, you can practice independently, and most people will practice without supervision.
Yeah, and also too, I just got off a call too because I host a baseline business behavior mentorship, and a lot of BCBAs want to go independent, and they should go independent. But that shift from grad student, RBT, ABA therapist to now you passed your exam, you're a BCBA, is night and day. It's like you could feel all confident and you think you know all your jams. No, that's not the case. Once you pass your exam, you go back down to the floor, and now you're
Yep.
shooting yourself up back to a ceiling that you're never going to reach because the field is constantly evolving, but you're always growing. And also too, depending on your client, right? It's always individualized. So you're never going to have the similar client. You're always going to be adjusting your skill set, your ABA tool set to support. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes. Yes, it is true. I feel like there is no, the sky is the limit, is how it feels right now. Like the field is still very much in development. So there's not always that clear trajectory. But I do think, 85% or something like that of BCBAs, somewhere between 80 and 85% of BCBAs report that they work in autism, which means that most BCBAs are working in this 3-tiered model or 2-tiered model where RBTs, or registered behavior technicians, are providing direct care or direct treatment, which could be 10 hours, 20 hours, 30 hours, 40 hours a week. And then the BCBAs are overseeing or managing the treatment plans and the behavior plans and all of the programming that goes into those caseloads. And I feel like
And
that's that. Go ahead.
yep, just to piggyback, Nicole did mention the 2-tier and 3-tier. So when it comes to the BACB, right? The 2-tier, let's start with the 3-tier. So the 3-tier would be like the RBT, which works one-to-one, which also could be an ABA therapist that's not registered, or behavioral therapist, right? That's providing ABA therapy. And then the BCABA, which is a bachelor's level assistant, so board certified assistant behavior analyst, would oversee those one-to-ones. And then the BCBA would oversee the BCABA. So the difference is there's the high school, you need to have a high school diploma for the RBT. The next level is bachelor's level, which is the BCABA. And then the next level is the BCBA, which is a master's level practitioner. So there's 3 different educational requirements. And then the 2-tier level would be like, instead of having the assistant, the BCBA is the one running the assistant role and also the BCBA role. I actually had somebody message me because they're a BCABA, and they were explaining like, well, why isn't there more options for BCABA when we're doing the BCBA role, besides like 6 things that we don't have access to do? And I was explaining, I'm like, well, you should just, maybe get your BCBA, because you're right, you're doing the BCBA role, but you're just not able to do like 6 other things. So, but you're still playing the role of a BCBA. So
Yeah.
you're the assistant to the BCBA. So you're doing all the stuff that BCBA would be doing, besides like 6 core things that you don't have that ability to do. So they were just a little upset, like, we're doing everything the BCBA does. I was like, exactly, you're the assistant.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and it's like you're limited because as a BCABA, you still have to be supervised under a BCBA. And that's another thing to be mindful of.
Yes. Yeah. And I think we should have a BCABA on here. So if anybody is
Yes.
listening and you're BCABA, shoot us an email. Our email will be in the show notes. But I feel like that is interesting because I, as a BCBA, often struggle to do everything when I work within that model, right? Where I'm overseeing behavior techs, and I don't have New Jersey doesn't really have BCABAs. It's
Here.
like not, it's really a 2-tiered model here. There's really not often BCABAs. I find it really hard to get everything done. And so I end up looking for people who are in field work, because I can almost train them to be the equivalent of a BCABA, where they're reviewing the graphs and they're making sure that all of the schedules and all of the electronic data is updated, which means that the program checklist that you print out so that you know what you're supposed to be doing is updated. And then if we have our student cheat sheets with the behavior plans on it, that gets every time I send, because it's one thing to send a message, but now I have 6 different places it needs to be updated. And the BCABA could be that person helping me do that. So I usually look for people who are in field work and interested in learning all of those pieces and interested in learning how to analyze the graphs or how to take ABC data or how to observe sessions so that they can take something off of my plate. Cause I sometimes I'm like, I don't see how this is possible for one person to not only do like the behavior analytic pieces, but then also the like case management logistical checklists.
And the case management, nobody talks about that. Guys, when you
Yeah.
become a BCBA, you become a case manager if you're especially the 2 tier.
Yes.
Like you gotta leverage your time. You gotta see your time in a week or a month lens, not like day. It's like, ooh, because you're forever filling in the blocks and like trying to be proactive of like what tasks that you have to be mindful of, especially if you have like a reauthorization coming up. Oh my gosh, yeah, it's like all about time management, 100%, and delegating if you can.
Yes. Yes. And I think it like every company that I've worked in or that I've had a hand in assisting with the development of or that I've consulted with, we usually end up creating some type of model where there is like a BCABA type position where there's like a lead therapist or a case manager who oversees the case, who is in charge of the case. And I was thinking about it the other day and I was like, there really is a reason for that because when I have somebody like a right hand man or person, when I have a right hand person, then they are able to take care of some of those logistical pieces so that I can really focus on the behavior analytic pieces. But then also, as they start to understand the ABA deeper, I now have somebody to collaborate with and I have
Yes.
somebody to like bounce things off of. And it feels a lot more community driven because yes, I might be the supervisor, but now I have somebody who I can get input from that I've like trained and developed and I trust them. And it just creates like the program is a higher quality.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah.
I had no idea about the two, like the difference in models until like probably a few months ago. Because I'm in Connecticut and I've never worked with a BCABA. I mean, I remember when I was in my undergrad, I worked for a school district and there was a BCABA. And she was going to school to get her master's, but like that was the only exposure I had of a BCABA. Otherwise,
Mhm.
things that I've worked for, there was a BCBA and then they were in charge of all the RBTs and the one-to-one. And then I learned about that 3-tier model where it's like, oh yeah, then I realized, oh my God, actually, like the RBTs, the BCABA is supposed to be doing like what I'm doing, but then like, because there's a BCBA that shared like she had 40 clients. I'm like, 40 clients? She's like, oh no, but we do the 3-tier model. And then she explained it to me. And I'm like, oh my God, that makes so much sense because
Mhm.
I had a couple BCABAs under her that have like, 8 to 10 clients. And then they consult with her for for that supervision piece and like reviewing
I
everything.
still don't know that I could handle 40 clients.
I know, but she explained it. Oh, that makes sense. So she has a couple hours that it's like the 40
Whole other topic. I think right now the medical model of ABA is very precarious and not it's in a hard balance and I think there's such high rates of burnout and such high rates of turnover and that piece of having that middle person to help take some bits and pieces off of the plate of everybody else in there could really make a huge difference. So maybe that's something we should be advocating for as a field and we'd love to hear more from other people about that.
Yes. Let us know. Let us know.
Yes. Yes. You know what we haven't done, Christina, for anybody who's listening who doesn't know we've defined BCBA for you. We've defined RBT for you. We have not told people what ABA is.
How do you, let's go back, right? So when somebody asks you, what's a BCBA? How do you respond?
Well, if somebody said to me, what's a BCBA? I would say a board certified behavior analyst. But if somebody asks me, what do you do? It
Yeah.
really depends on who they are. When it's just like a random person, I would usually say I'm an educational and behavioral consultant, or I say I'm a behaviorist. I very rarely would say I'm a BCBA.
Yeah, but you're not defining what the operationally defining it. You're just saying
The title,
yeah.
right. But isn't that like what fintech people do too, where they're like, oh, I'm in fintech? And I'm like, I don't
You know
know.
what
That's like, no, I don't even know. Like, I barely know what those two words are when you financial technology, I guess. But like,
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
yeah, like,
I love explaining what a BCBA is. So, and I also have this pin on my camera on my page. But remember I was saying that we have to do better with explaining exactly what our role is. So I like to explain like what's a BCBA. So I explain, oh, BCBA stands for Board Certified Behavioral Analyst. And then I explain like we use ABA, which is a branch of psychology, right? So think of it like psychologists deal with the inside brain, how we think and stuff, and then behavioral analysts think of like outside environmental piece of why we behave. So, and then people are like, and it's the truest. It's like psychologists do with the inside and behavior analysts do with the outside environmental piece. And then I kind of explain how, we usually work with learners that have autism, but we can do way more outside of autism. But it's just basically analyzing the environment and, creating ways to, build skills and I have a really good video, I forgot. But basically, I like to say like it's a bridge to psychology. So psychologists deal with the inside, behavior analysts deal with the outside, and we understand why people engage and do the things that they do. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we look at behavior more so than internal, why people think through things. But I also think there is a whole component of psychology that goes into analyzing behavior that is often overlooked when people think about ABA, because people are like, oh, you just analyze behavior. So you analyze what you can see. A good behavior analyst is also analyzing internal events and teaching people how to talk about and label and discuss internal events so that they can change socially significant behaviors, whether it's like, oh, instead of feeling angry and like having a rage and throwing everything, I'm actually going to communicate it. I'm going to recognize what's happening internally and express it. So we're still analyzing that behavior, but we're not just being like, well, why do you feel rage? We're also looking at like, okay, when you feel rage, you have this behavior and this behavior causes social issues because you get kicked out of wherever you get kicked out of or whatever happens.
yeah,
And how can we make shifts so that you can have sustainable, how can we reward the behaviors we want to see more of? And how can we what I always say, what my new thing has been, and I say this to my kids, probably like a broken record, and I say this to the parents I work with, and I say this all the time at this point. How do you breathe energy into the things you want to see grow? And don't breathe energy into the things you don't want to grow.
I love that.
And I think that's my goal is like, how do I figure out how to breathe energy like a detective? It's like, okay, you want your kid to be able to go, you want to be able to go on a family vacation. How do we breathe energy into the behaviors we need to see and the skills we need to happen to make that happen?
I feel like a lot of people forget that, MO is a big component of why we engage in like motivation, right? It's like you know
Mm-hmm.
what somebody is motivated for. You have to understand what motivates them and then shape and create a TA to get them to accomplish achievable steps. All right, well, let's break that down when it comes to like duration. Do you have the educational requirements or not? Right. If not, that's okay. We'll get them. And that motivation and like reinforcing yourself because a lot of stuff, guys, is we are responsible for our own behavior. So
Mm-hmm.
you are the only one that's going to get you where you need to go. So it's up to you to determine if you want to change your behavior today to shape the future version of who you're going to be tomorrow. Where do you want to go? How do we get there? What can we do to keep you motivated so that you can continue to strive? Because we can have this conversation. I could tell you, I could give you the roadmap, but you got to engage and start navigating that roadmap. You know what I mean? And I
Right.
think especially in this field in regards to advocating, right? Especially with burnout being so high, it's so hard to kind of advocate and we're expected to know everything. And like, hello, I'm letting you know you're not going to know everything, but like seeking mentorship and like creating in a community is so important too.
Yes. Yeah. What did you just say? You said the roadmap. So a roadmap is like an antecedent modification where like we can give you the roadmap and we can give you a plan, but there's also consequences or rewards or reinforcers or things that happen after you engage in behaviors that make them more or less likely to occur. That's why oftentimes like when you're like, well, I told him to do this and he didn't do it. That's just that's just the beginning. You have to want to do it. And then there also has to be positive consequences, positive outcomes that make you more likely to continue to do it again in the future. And I think, like, becoming a BCBA, it's like if you have to start at a bachelor's and then go to the master's and then do all the field work and then do all that, the reward is you become a BCBA at the end, but that might feel too far off for you. You might have to do something. Maybe you become a BCABA in the middle, or I've worked with people who have done their bachelor's in like OT, so they can be a OT assistant to start. So like you're making these milestones in the middle to make the whole process more motivating and rewarding throughout. Because like, especially if you're like just figuring it out, I feel like I stumbled into things. That's how I got here. So there wasn't that much of a plan. But if you're really thinking about planning things out, then you might want to be building in those rewards. And that's the same for the kids that we work with and the families that we work with. Like, I think oftentimes one of the biggest gripes I hear about ABA, and I just saw a post on this on like maybe LinkedIn, where somebody was like, parents have to wait more than 3 weeks to see change. And I was like, yes and no, right? Because if I'm a parent This is expensive. This is changing my whole life. If I'm a parent and my child is enrolled in ABA, I either now have to get them to a center or I'm coordinating their therapist pushing in somewhere, or there's a person coming into my house all the time. And if after 3 weeks, I'm not feeling good about it or seeing not huge changes, but if I'm not seeing anything from it, it's a huge life shift. Why would I continue to do this if I'm not invested in it? Or if everything I've heard about ABA is that it's manipulative, or if my kid cries every single time the therapist shows up, why would I continue to do that? Like, because somebody who I may or may not trust is telling me that I should keep waiting and I should keep waiting. I feel like I've been through that before where I've tried different things with my kids, and the doctor will say like, "Oh, give it a little bit more time." And my instincts are like, this is not working.
Yeah.
And there's never been a time where I'm like, you know what? I'm glad I didn't trust my instincts. I feel like if after 3 weeks, like I read that post and I was like, I get it. You're not going to see major behavioral change and your kid is not going to be cured. Your kid is not going to suddenly listen to you in 3 weeks. But also if after 3 weeks, you're not feeling like, okay, this is working and this feels good, it's probably not working.
Yeah. I know. And also too, right? I remember one of my BCBAs, he told me like, especially when you're starting off with services, right? You could be like,
Yeah.
okay, can you please tell me some of the things that, that you would love help or support on. And they say this and this and this and this and this. And they say like 100 things, right? And it's like, it could be so overwhelming, right? So it's like, how can we focus on something? He said, always try to focus on a task or a skill that can be immediately like reinforced,
Yes.
taped up so that you
Mm-hmm.
like you could see like, wow, like this actually works. And it only took so little so that you could build that trust faster with the families and then slowly shape up to address all the other areas that they're of concern. So it's like, how can we find something that's lower effort, faster to shape to be able to kind of conquer and shape up all the other skills and areas that, they're concerned.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like, so one thing I always do with a lot of the families I work with, because I work with a lot of kids who don't regulate their emotions well. And so the first thing I usually tell family is to figure out a time where their child is most open and receptive to having conversations, because that's when you're going to learn the most about what's going on with them. And that's when you usually find out like, oh, they don't like school because the kid that they sit next to like nudges them and the teacher doesn't believe them. And you're like, that's actually a real problem. And now they're having an emotional overreaction to the rest of their life because of this like little thing that we could troubleshoot with the teacher. So it's like the first step is like figure out when they'll talk to you. Is it the car? Is it playing video games? Is it playing a board game? Is it over ice cream? Like, what is the setting? Is it right before bed? A lot of kids, it's right before bed where it's like truth serum. You find out all the details. And then the other thing I say is like just model talking about, they don't talk about their emotions. Do you talk about your emotions? Just model it. I'm not going to make you do this whole thing. I'm just going to say like, mention, oh, I'm annoyed that I burnt the eggs.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot to start the dishwasher. I feel so silly. Like just model it for them. And a lot of parents are like, wow, they're taught they told me they were angry the other day.
Yeah.
And so it's like a really low, because most kids do somewhat understand their emotions, but they don't know they're supposed to talk about it because nobody else is.
Exactly.
So it's like a pretty low hanging fruit. And that helps parents feel confident and feel like, oh, I can make these easy changes.
Mhm.
And then helps them feel invested in what our work that we're doing together. So I feel like that's such a good point, is like, but they're not going to see major change. They're going to be like, my kid told me they were angry, but also they still are having meltdowns every single day. But they did tell me they're angry.
Of
Yeah.
course, yeah. They're
Yeah.
going to identify that feeling and then
Yeah.
take it to FCT and proactive
Yeah.
medicine. If this happens, you can advocate for yourself or give yourself space. Like
Yeah.
there's steps to it, right? And you have to reinforce the first steps, but it's still doing it's a shaping process. Emotional regulation is so huge. Oh
Yes,
my
I know it is so huge, which can be a whole other episode. We got to go back and make a list of all the ideas we've talked about in this episode. One thing, we have gotten to a place where we're kind of talking about what you and I do now. I don't know if you and I have talked totally a little bit, but how did you end up in ABA?
by accident.
Me too. So funny.
After my undergrad, I moved down to Florida for a year and living my best life. And then I was around like 23, 24, and I decided to come back home because, I'm like, I'm getting old. I thought I was old. I had my undergrad, and my undergrad is in criminal justice, by the way. So I came back home and I couldn't find a job at all with this degree. And then I found a job as a life skills coach and a community mentor.
Oh, okay.
lessons. And I really enjoyed it. So we between the two roles, we'd like pick them up and we go to like social skills group and we'd have lunch, go to activities. And then as a community mentor, I mean, as a life skills coach, I'd go in the home and they basically had similar to like goals that we have, like ADLs, creating a simple meal, laundry, whatever their goals that were for specifically for them, I'd help support. And then I was probably doing that for maybe like almost a year. I always had two jobs. I always had 2 to 3 jobs. I'm the type of
Mm-hmm.
person to keep myself busy always. So I was working that and then I worked as a direct care staff at a nonprofit called the Focus Center
Mm.
for Autism. And the participants, there were autistic males that were in and out of foster care in the system.
Wow.
And then they aged out. So this was a transitional home. So it's a 3 floor to learners and all the apartments, which is pretty cool because we take them out to the community, we teach them how to budget their money for Social Security. And then I wanted something more challenging. And so I found a full-time position in the school as an ABA therapist working with children
Mm.
with autism. And so I was like, because at the other ones I was driving all over the place. So I'm like, all right,
Right.
I work with the adults. It was cool. I want something more challenging. This is more, it was a full-time position in my town, a low effort, high reinforcement, right? So I went in for the interview and they brought me to the CDL class and it was amazing. We had a BCBA and we had a SPED teacher and we had all our friends and everyone had a one-to-one and it was the most ideal environment to be first exposed to ABA. And that's how I started my career. I'm like, oh my gosh, I started working with the kids. I was like, what is this ABA? I love it. It fit my personality. And then I was like, well, how do I make more money? Like, how do you grow in this field? And that's when they said, well, you got to go back and get your master's degree to become a BCBA. And so that right there was like, okay. I signed up for my in-person program in Connecticut. And then throughout my undergrad and stuff, I made sure to work in the school. Then I worked in the home and then I worked in the community and then I worked in
Wow.
the clinic. So
Yep.
while I was earning my hours and stuff, I wanted to get all exposure. So I was able to work in all those different environments. And then I became BCBA and then I became
Yeah.
and I started my own practice and now we're here.
Now we're here. Boom. Done. I feel like, I don't know, you're probably a little younger than me, but in Seinfeld, they would be like, yada,
Yeah, I love
yada, yada, yada. And
it.
that's it. It's like, and then the end. So,
How'd you get into it? I love
yeah,
that. How'd you get into the field?
my whole life, I wanted to either be a teacher or a doctor. Like, I want to work with children. Even as a child, I wanted to work with children, which I think I don't really understand how I knew that, but I don't remember ever, other than being on television, I guess, at some point, other than that, wanting to do other things. So I went to college. I was pre med. I was majoring in biology. And then I tacked on a public health major. And I was like, yeah, this public health stuff's like kind of cool. I'm like, it's just as interesting. I really like sciences. I've always been a science person. And like to my parents' credit, I didn't realize I lived in a space where I didn't realize how rare it was for women to be interested in science because they never discouraged it. And they always were like, yeah, like, cool, you like science. You want to go to science camp? I did like a camp at some point where I built electrical circuits. I liked science. My brother liked history. He's a lawyer. I liked science. And my parents were like, cool, do it. You do you. That sounds great. They never were like, well, women don't really do sciences, which, I think it was like 1% of women were in STEM at some point when I was in STEM before it was called STEM. And yeah, anyway, so I was a biology major, I was pre med, I did this public health major. And then as part of the public health major, I had to do an internship. So at the same time I'm figuring out an internship, I'm also signing up to take the MCATs. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to take these MCATs and then I'm going to go to med school for 4 years. And then I'm going to do residency and then I'm going to do all this. And I think had I become a doctor, I probably would have done something like pediatric oncology or pediatric immunology or something. I like really love the immune system and find it really fascinating how the immune system works and doesn't work. And I was like, God, that's like a really, really, really long road. That feels just really long. And that's kind of what I'm talking about. I think I'm speaking from that experience when I'm saying when somebody's like, oh, I have to get a bachelor's and then a master's and then a field work. I was like, oh my God, that's like 10 years of my life. And I don't know if I am passionate enough about medicine to commit to this 10 years of my life. And so I'm like, I don't know. I signed up for the MCATs. I bought the books. I'm like starting to study and I'm also starting an internship And I happened to start an internship at the New England Center for Children. They were at a career fair at my college, Brandeis University. And I was like, oh, I like kids. I like schools. This seems cool. I'll go do this. And the New England Center for Children, it has been around since the 70s. And it is a ABA school. You know, they're the top of the field. Like I stumbled into the top of the field. I was just like, I'll just try this internship. And I walked in and there was this kid. And I was just like, I get this. He was nonverbal. He was silly. He was connected. I was like, I just love this. This is
Yeah.
kids. You get to work one-on-one. You get to be fun. You get to be creative. And I was like, I want to do this. And I sent my MCAT books back. And then I worked there when I worked there. So like all of this is like literally like I stumbled one step to the next. I didn't really have a plan. So then I worked there. They were like, well, we partner to offer master's programs, which people should find these type of programs. And I've tried to start them. I tried to start one in New York. Some states, it's really hard to start one because of like crazy regulations about libraries on campus and things like that. They offer two master's programs. So one was a master's in ABA and one was a master's in special education. The master's in special education didn't require the GREs. I was like, I'm going to do that one. That seems good. I'll do it. I'm working here anyway. I may as well do it. Sure. So I enrolled and, you know, they subsidize your master's and they also take the fee for your classes out of your paychecks. So it's like a much easier process. Everything, you don't feel the like financial impact as much. They spread it out over your pay periods. And so I did that. And then I worked in public schools. I was a certified teacher. I worked in two different public schools. I left NEC for my last year of student teaching, did that, you know, worked in a public school setting for that as a technician, ABA technician. And then I had an opportunity to be a preschool teacher for maternity leave replacement and did that. So I did that for a few months and then they extended it. They were like, you could come work here. But that was when I was living in Boston. My now ex-husband got into social work school in New York. So we moved to New York. I wanted to be closer to home anyway, because I knew like eventually I'd want to be close to my family. My family's really close. So we moved to New York. And because I had that preschool experience, I was hired by a private school in New York City to be a teacher in a one-to-one ABA classroom. And so then I was like, well, I'm here now. May as well get my BCBA while I'm here. Enrolled in FIT. Was like, how do I do that? I've been in the field for a few years. How do I do this as like simply as possible? So then I worked there and then I became the clinical director of their affiliated center. And then I got to a point where the center was growing and there were more and more people under me. And I was like, I don't necessarily want to grow in that way. But like clinical director is the top. What do you do now? You know, unless you work for like a place that has multiple centers and you're a regional director and then I don't even know what's after regional director. You know, you keep moving up there. I don't want to supervise more and more people. I'm not enjoying that. And so I started looking into private practice. And I've done all sorts of wild things, I feel like, since I started my private practice and gone in all sorts of areas I didn't expect. I've now been fully in private practice since 2021. So it's like almost 4 years. I just feel like I've grown and changed so much. Like I cannot emphasize how much I've changed and how much my ABA has evolved and how much my practice has evolved in so many different ways. And like how grateful I am to be where I am. And that's also like, I want to give back to the ABA community. And like, really, you know, I was feeling burnt out as a clinical director. And I was like, is ABA even like, do I even want to do ABA anymore? Like, I don't even think I want to be in this field anymore. I thought about becoming a lawyer. I was like, maybe I'll be a lawyer.
Yeah.
Every lawyer I know was like, don't do that.
I know. I thought about getting my JD too.
Yeah.
You know?
Do I want to do that? Yeah. I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. It feels really hard. And I just think like it all happened organically over time. And I think like I met myself where I was in the moment and then kind of have allowed that to grow in each space that I've been in. I don't know. It's worked out.
Yeah. And you're with your private practice too. She doesn't just give it like your clients have ADHD and you microdose ABA. So it's not like a 30-hour ABA therapy practice.
Yes. Yes. I feel like that could be a whole other episode is like, what does that mean to provide low doses of ABA? And like, how does that look? And it could be a whole series. How do we extend past the like current medical model? Yeah.
It's needed to have, that's why we're going to reinforce these conversations because maybe there's other people that are interested in micro dosing ABA services.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's possible, guys.
Yes, it so is. There's so many different ways that we can apply ABA. And I think what's cool, just listening to your story too, we've covered like almost every setting and like almost every way that ABA can be applied between the two of us. And yet there's still all these other people that I'd love to hear from and love to learn from because there's just so many. When I worked at NEC and then worked at a public school, I was like, oh my God, the data sheets look different and this looks different and ABA is different than what NEC taught me. And that's a core message I teach at Hunter College. And one of the core messages I try to give to my students is like, you're in one place now. ABA is going to look different and can be applied in like infinite different ways.
I know. And we should have like episodes on like an episode for every different setting and we could share like our experience because I know one of the questions I get often is like people don't know if they want to go into clinic or they want to go into school. And I'm like, listen, if you're going to go to school, I'm in Connecticut. I've been in like 10 different schools and like several different districts. And not one school had the same concept or understanding of what ABA is. It looks so different in every single school, every single setting, especially like people's understanding of it and like the amount of responsibilities and your role as a BCBA. That's a whole nother conversation for sure.
It really is. And I think for professionals, also like you don't have to get stuck somewhere. I think sometimes people are like, do I work in a school or a clinic? Look at us. Between the two of us, I think we've worked in every setting. Over your career, you can switch about different places, but I think it's like finding the place that aligns with your values and what you're looking to achieve in that part of your life. And I think like part of why I'm in private practice now is I also needed to be more flexible for my kids. I'm doing what works for me right now. Something else might work for me in 10 years or 5 years. I might not be in private practice in 5 years. Who knows? My goal is in 5 years, I'm sitting on a beach, relaxing all day, every day. What?
We're supposed to with some margaritas.
Yep. Just hanging out. So I think like it doesn't always necessarily have to be. I think there's also, for parents or other people working with BCBAs, those like green flags to look for in knowing when you found somebody who not even necessarily is good at what they do, but a good fit for either your child or your team. I think that that's like another thing that I get a lot of parents who come to me where they're like, oh, we've done ABA before. And then they describe the person they've worked with. And I'm like, well, that person was not aligned with your values at all. So of course it didn't work out. What does that come up a lot for you where like people, I think because ABA has a little bit of a tough reputation, what is your advice to a parent who might be listening of what to look for? How do they know how to find a qualified BCBA and how do BCBAs market themselves as qualified and highlight their abilities? That was a two-part question.
You have to feel comfortable with the person you're communicating with, period, as a parent. It's like when you're on the phone, you're asking questions. Are they trying to brush you off? Like, oh, yeah, like, or are they open to, oh, this is perfectly fine. I understand you. They're validating what your concerns are. They're open to answering all your questions. Like, you, and especially as a practitioner, guys, like these families have to trust us to care for their kids. Of course, I want you to feel safe and comfortable dropping your child off. Of course, I want to hear what you're struggling with at home and how I can support you. So I think communication and rapport, never stop building rapport with families, is monumental in regards to being able to support each other because now we are a team and we have to feel comfortable coming to each other with concerns. And, being both sides being heard to better support the child that's receiving the services.
Yes, it's so true.
So communication is going to be the biggest piece and making somebody feel welcome and heard and not like rushed off or like, oh yeah, like not available or you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, which makes me wonder how many people as BCBAs have learned how to communicate with parents. Like who was taught that in grad school? Really would love to know who was taught that in grad school because you're saying like in order for parents to feel good about working with you, you need to be a skilled communicator and build a good relationship with families. But how are we teaching people that?
Yeah.
Who do we teach that to? When are we teaching people that? And so I think it often comes down to like who kind of has those natural abilities or has been taught that in other places. And then versus there's people who maybe are more clinical. I think like I often get the parents who are turned off by the clinical, ducks in a row, which used to be me 100%. I think not every parent, if you're the type of person who's like, I just want to see the data, you want to find a BCDA who is like, here is your data. I've done it. Here's your data. Here's what your kid is doing. But you want to find somebody who's going to value you in the way that you're looking to be valued as the child's parent. And I've had some parents who are like, I trust you. I want you to do it. And I don't want you to ask me a million questions. And I've had other parents that are like, I want to be an equal member of the team and I want to go through every single goal with you.
Yeah.
And I don't think nobody's wrong. We all parent differently.
And I love that you said that too, right? It's like going over every goal because I've had a couple meets with families that they've never reviewed the whole treatment plan with their BCBA.
Yeah.
So they don't even know what this goal is targeting or like why, like, like this one is focusing on joint attention and this one's focusing on that reciprocal conversation piece, that back and forth listener speaker. So this kind of goes back to like our learning history, right? Like we mentioned, like I've worked in a lot of different environments. And I think when you work in the home setting, that's also going to shape your perspective as a practitioner because you see like especially like I was in a really unique situation where I was in the home and I was also in the school with the family that I was working with. So and they were also suing the school. So I saw how nasty, like it was the back and forth, but also the effects that it had in the home life as well as the school life. So like having that perspective of like what a family goes through, especially when they are advocating, because you are your biggest advocate, you have to be your child's biggest advocate. 100%.
Mm-hmm.
But it's unfortunate how the schools kind of make things more harder to really support the learners, having and also working from like older to all the way down to early intervention
Yeah.
and daughter at 25 weeks and literally seeing her develop outside of my body, like, till 2. It's just like I feel like I have like the whole 24-hour life cycle of understanding the perspective of a life sense of somebody that has a disability. So I just have like a different lens of understanding and I'm so compassionate. It's like, just trying to make the families feel so supportive and comfort whenever I'm in charge of the care of their child.
Yes. Yes. I think also I've worked with a lot of kids with rare genetic disorders. And I just participated yesterday actually in a study I was a participant being interviewed for a study about therapies provided for kids with rare genetic disorders. And I, one of the questions they said was like, what do you wish like other people knew? And I think that those parents are really parents who have seen everything. And I've worked with parents who have had doctors be like, your kid's never going to walk. Your kid's not going to, they're not going to live past a certain age or not going to breathe on their own. And so I am one person in their bigger journey. And my opinion is only a small piece of this whole big piece of this child's whole life. And so I just feel really strongly that the parent's opinion, the parent is truly the expert in their child. They've also been through what they've been through with their child and understand their child's needs and their history in a way that I never, ever will. And oftentimes, parents who are seeking support have already had negative experiences with the people that are meant to support them. And that's not to say, a doctor saying like your child's probably not going to live, I think is doing the compassionate thing and preparing parents for the worst case scenario. But now this is a parent who's like, well, we defied the odds of him living. Like, what's to say he's not going to talk? Like, and who am I to tell you your child's not going to talk when somebody else told you that your child's never going to walk and here he is walking down the street? So I think it puts things in a different perspective when you've seen
and support them and allow them
yeah,
opportunity to practice, right? And that's
yeah,
another thing that it's like also like the medical model, like you mentioned, right? Like before my water broke and before they pulled me into the C-section, they literally sat me down and had me sign a paper of consensus, acknowledge like, hey, we're not responsible. What can happen? She could come out with cerebral palsy, autism, neurological. They literally listed all these
oh my
different things
gosh,
that go wrong with my daughter right before they pulled me in to have me sign off that, hey, this could happen, but we're not liable for that. You know what I mean? And it's like, that's how you're gonna, like, hey, by the way, this could happen and we're not responsible. You see how like it just kind of puts it out there? I remember her dad asked after they left her, he's like, well, what are we gonna do? I'm like, what do you mean we're gonna still love her? That's our child.
yeah,
Never doubt the capabilities of your child because of what someone else says, especially
mm-hmm.
medical doc, like, like, oh, just wait, just wait. No, if you're not comfortable, you don't feel like, don't wait, just get a second opinion. Right.
Mhm.
So I totally understand. It's like, don't, but also too, parents may take that information and just not expect much of their child and not give them opportunities to practice these skills,
Mhm.
which is going to limit their ability to, become independent, but also like have a space to navigate their environment because they're not being taught because their
Right.
expectation is set so low. So it's like, don't doubt their capabilities.
Right. I know it's so true. Like it really, I do see that as well, where parents are like, oh, well, I just don't want to, I feel bad that he lives this hard life.
Yeah.
And
It's
it's
like,
like, well, you're not making it any easier by doing things. And I see like even with my own kids, when I push them to be more independent, they feel better about themselves. And so they do more. And I think that that's true for all of us. Like, feels great to lay in bed and do nothing and binge watch TV for a day. Doesn't feel great when you start doing it for days on end. I start to get weird. It doesn't feel great when you do it days on end. It like you feel disempowered. And I think like finding a behavior analyst who helps you feel empowered as a parent and helps you feel like a participant in your child's life and modulates their support, which I think is very hard for behavior analysts. I don't think that's a skill that necessarily we're taught or is expected to come naturally either, but creates a trusting space for all of these things to happen where you can still have the autonomy as a parent, but you also have that support system to better understand your child and their unique needs. I think that's my recommendation is like, if you feel good about the relationship that you have with a behavior analyst. And I remember one of my first parents in my first classroom at this private school, we were emailing a few years later and she was like, one of the things I always liked about you, she was like, you were new and you look like a baby. And I was not sure about you being my kid's teacher. And she was like, but you would always say, if you didn't know something, you would tell me straight up.
oh
You
my
know what?
God, that.
I don't know that. I don't know. I don't know I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. She's like, and then you'd take a week and you would learn the answer and you would
Yeah.
come back to me and you would know what to do. And I was like, wow, huh, cool. Like I just was like, I felt comfortable telling, like we established a good relationship and I felt comfortable being like, I don't know what you want from me. And it worked for us. But like, I don't know, it was a very high compliment I felt where I was like, I didn't even mean to do that. But she really reinforced this idea that like actually being transparent and being, again, my authentic self was actually better than being like giving lip service or just telling her something I think she wants to hear.
I love that lip service. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
we're not doing the lip service. You're gonna be like, you know what? That's a great question. Let me go back and talk to my team about that.
Yeah.
We're not gonna have all the answers. I said that earlier, and that's okay. That
Yeah.
doesn't make you any less. You're still building your wisdom and your skill set. So now, and everyone is all individualized, right? It's like we're not gonna know until we reach a specific profile or contingency, and it's like, okay, let me go back to the books. Let me go ask someone that might have had this experience. And that's why having a network of other providers is so important too, to brain
Yes.
each other's brains off and like, ask for
Mm-hmm.
advice.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny. One of the things I was scared about going into independent practice was that I wouldn't have enough of a community without having a workplace. And I think I have a stronger community now. There's definitely still times where I'm like, who do I tell this cool information to? Or like this exciting thing happened to me. And like, where do I go share this? But for the most part, I feel like my community now, independently, because I've had to work at it and be intentional at it and find the people who are going to lift me up instead of just being like, oh, we all happen to work at the same place. So now we're forced to lift each other up or hopefully have good attitudes about each other. I've really found a community where I feel supported and I can, I've got people I can reach out to. Like I just have all these different spaces, whether it's like I have a couple behavior analyst moms that I text with sometimes. I think like I have a whole group of New York City behavior analysts that I have a WhatsApp with. And I think it's created these spaces that feel empowering.
Mhm.
And those didn't necessarily exist when working in other places.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
And especially like when you become an entrepreneur and a business owner, it's like you're in contact of contingencies that no one else understands. So it's like you want to put yourself in rooms with people that have experienced it or also in the same rate of where you are, right?
Yes.
So it's like, let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's build a community to empower each other so that you don't fail. We all grow together.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And I felt for a long time very alone. And I think as a clinical director, I often felt alone. And I get a lot from BCBAs who work in companies that they feel alone. They don't have anyone. I mentored somebody who worked in a school district with other BCBAs, and she was like, nobody's ever read an FBA I've written. She's like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if I do them right. She's like, I do the best I can. I don't know. And I was like, let me read one of your FBAs.
How was it?
It was good. She was good. It was very good. I was like, yeah, you're fine. But like it is really hard when you're on your own and you don't have a mentor or supervisor or a community. It is really easy for that imposter syndrome to sneak in. Um, and then I think it's also really easy for that to come out when the only people that you interact with are parents of the clients that you're working with. Huh, that's interesting. I'm like, I wonder if helping establish more ABA communities would help increase parent satisfaction with ABA services if BCBAs felt better supported.
I'm sure there would be
Yeah.
like,
I'm like very curious about that because then I'm like, parents would be less of like, because there are times like, especially in COVID, the only adults I interacted with were the parents of my clients for a while. And it's like very easy to not be able to hide every portion of yourself and not come off as your best professional self when those are the only other adults that you're ever seeing. Interesting.
maybe we could put a little group together.
Yeah, right?
Little monthly cute, like a little monthly support group. It's like
Yep.
a term for it, like, and they exist.
The professional communities.
Yes.
Yeah, they exist. Reach out, find people. And I think for parents too, find other parents who get ABA, find out what they like about their BCBAs, about their ABA providers. And I think it's like, don't be afraid if something's not a match. Don't be afraid to give feedback,
Mm-hmm.
or email us like, hey, I got a BCBA. I don't know if they're the right fit. What do
Mm-hmm.
I say? How do I handle it? I think
Yep.
it is really hard. And I think like they're a really nice person, but they're not helping my kid. What do I do about that?
And then guys too, there's a lot of like professionals that are now online too. So like if you don't have an in-person community, you could leverage your social media
Yeah.
to build an online community.
Yes. Yes. I have like a surprising amount of like Instagram DM groups and Facebook Messenger groups, like things like that I never would have thought I had. And like I go to different ones for different things. I would say I'm not as active a participant because I get very overwhelmed by how many messages there are, but I will chime in when I feel like I can offer expertise. And then I'll go to different ones for different things depending on
What
what
you're
I'm looking for. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I found that to be like so, so helpful.
Yeah, I always tell too, like between BCBAs and Paris, it's like find Facebook groups, find the ones that have a ton of followers, and like you could search your questions so you could streamline like getting answers.
Yeah,
We'll have a
such
rate.
a good idea.
It's my favorite. It's like low effort, high reinforcement.
I know. That's your thing. I feel like my thing is breathe energy. Your like tagline is low effort, high reinforcement. Mine is always breathe energy into the things you want to see grow.
And then
Like,
you know what the other one is? You grow through what you go through. Is it
oh, I
like
love that. Uh-huh. I love it. I
I know.
love it. You have all this like beautiful stuff.
I have another one that says progress over perfection.
Yeah. My son's kindergarten teacher used to say, practice makes permanent, not practice makes perfect. And I
Hmm.
still say that sometimes. He's like, stop saying that. I'm 10 now.
He's like,
Sorry,
I don't
buddy.
want to think about my kindergarten teacher.
Yeah. He's like, I'm over that. That was so many years ago. He's like a tween. He's so much a tween at this point. It's a very interesting age. So
I know. So, and how old is the other one?
6. Yeah. Parenting's a whole other journey, which I think we got to look at our episode guides. That's definitely one we have lined up to talk about what it's like to be a parent and a BCBA at the same time. Because I think that's a community that I've stumbled into recently of like people who can't turn off our professional brain or our parent brain, no matter what shoes you're wearing at those times. So,
See, I feel like I'm obsessed with the science of ABA, and especially since it's like a lifestyle for me.
mhm.
ABA lifestyle and ABA mindset. It's like I see things all based off of response effort and reinforcement. So it's like, how can I make this, you know, chore faster? How can I remember? Especially with ADHD, I'm always forgetting. So I purposely place things strategically so that I could recall how to behave in the future of like when I walk by this or like, I have like I stem off my little hanging nails. So it's like, okay, I have a nail clippers on my keychain. I have one on my bed and I have one in the kitchen. Those are just common areas where I'm always at, where I always find myself stemming off my fingers. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Literally,
Yeah.
like I'm ABAing all day of like, and also like having routine. Like first thing I do when I wake up is starting my coffee and having my cup of coffee because I want to wake up feeling accomplished and like checking off that tasks of like I did my coffee today and reinforcing myself to get up.
Yeah.
Motivation.
Yeah. That's so funny. My first thing, I'm usually like, I'm not getting out of bed. It's so hard for me to get out of bed. I'm a night person, I think. I would stay up till like 2 a.m. working and then sleep till noon and do it all again. But, my kids exist. So
Mhm.
I can't do that. And then also, like, the rest of the world exists. I can't sleep till noon and start my work day at noon or 2 once I'm ready. What did you just say that I was going to say? It's so funny when you said that I was picking my fingernails and I do the same thing. I keep chapsticks everywhere because I can't, and hand lotion everywhere. Like there is one in my car, there is one in the drawer right here, there's one by my desk, there's one upstairs. Literally every single place I can have a chapstick and a hand lotion, there's a chapstick and a hand lotion because I'm the same way. And I think when you were saying that, I was like, it really is a lifestyle because I look at ABA as being like a detective. And sometimes it's like being an environmental detective of like figuring like and so when I work with, whether it's with kids or companies or families or my own life, I'm like, what is the problem? Let's describe the problem and figure out like, what is the root of this issue?
Mhm.
And how do I fix it basically? Or how do I address it? Maybe it's not fixed, but like, how do I address it? And that can be hard as a parent, which we can talk more about when we get to that episode, because oftentimes problems with your kids you can't fix. And so I've had to reshape my own behavior to be like, I'm not necessarily here to fix this, but what can I do in my role as the parent? Like, I'm not necessarily here to come in and tell you, like, add chapsticks in every single different room. I'm more here to be like, your lips are always chapped. Like, what can you do? What are you going to do about that? Like,
Mhm.
how are you going to address that? And so I feel like I'm more the support system to help my kids learn how to do the same thing. And like, I think because I'm a behavior analyst, I'm really a problem solver.
Yes. It's the analytic in us. It's like you analyze everything, but also too, like to piggyback off of how you kind of set up the environment for your
Yeah.
child to kind of process so that he can problem solve himself, which is now going to be able to build that independent and resilience and like confidence, right?
Yeah. That's
So
the goal.
mhm, I love that.
Yeah. 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 And I think that's at the crux, I feel like, of what I do as a behavior analyst is listening and observing problems or things that are not working. If it, and this is where I don't necessarily say I'm trauma informed or neurodiversity affirming because I think that inherent in understanding the problem is understanding how somebody's brain works and is understanding what their learning history and trauma history and medical history and all of those components are. Because in order to understand the problem, I need to understand all of those components before I can come to a solution that's going to effectively address that problem for that person or that system.
Mhm.
And I guess like, I feel like I'm having a revelation like as we're talking that I think like that is like the crux of everything I do is like I gather all of this information and then I'm like, what's the path forward? Now we understand the history. What's the path forward? And how are we going to know if the path forward is successful and the right path? And I think that that's like, yeah, you can apply that definition for me for every single thing I do. Done. Described my job. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, and then also to kind of like feed into that, right? It's like depending on your setting, right?
Yeah.
It's oh, you're calling us in for help, but also too, it's like who else is in the same environment that's sharing the same space because they all need to be heard. Because it's not just
Mm-hmm.
one person, it's like, oh, now the teacher and also the classmates and all this and all that. So how can we kind of like be able to pull everyone together so we're neutral and everyone feels supported?
Yeah.
Always having another perspective outside of just one perspective, which is so
Yes.
important. And a lot of people have a hard time understanding somebody else's perspective because they're only living in their perception.
Yes. And I think that's hard when you are, as a behavior analyst, trying to gather information and you're like, okay, this parent's telling me this, and this parent's telling me this, and then the school's telling me that.
And then
And the
you observe the
child,
kid, the
yeah,
environment, you're like,
I have like everything you bought, but like all of those realities are shaped by their own histories and their own perceptions. And you have to validate and take them as their own truths because that is for them, that is true.
yes.
Yeah. It's so complex. And I think like good behavior analysts are able to do all of those pieces and still be able to say to a parent, like, I hear you that that's your priority and believe them and validate that that's their truth. I think that's what it is like a parent should look for a behavior analyst that validates their truth.
Hmm.
And that doesn't necessarily mean giving in to the truth and being like, oh, you don't want your kid to stim? Great. We're going to stop them from stimming because that's not neurodiversity affirming. And like for some kids, like I have kids that we work on not stimming in a movie theater, maybe because they want to go to the movies, but it's disruptive. And then somebody yells at them and it sets off a whole tantrum. So we work on that. But for the most part, like if we don't have to address stimming, I'm not going to address stimming. But like you can still reaffirm like, yeah, stimming that is really disruptive to you, or it's really hard for you to handle. And like, how are we going to create an environment where your child feels accepted and safe, but you also are not feeling like your nerves are shot from what's going on in your house?
Yeah. Or feel like you can't leave your house.
Yeah.
Period. It's like you
Yeah.
can leave. You go to the playground, go to the mall, you can go out, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, how do we maybe that validation is like, yeah, it does feel like everybody's looking at you. Let's start in a place where that's so crowded, nobody's going to notice. Let's go somewhere where that's an inclusive setting so that you're going to see other kids doing the same stuff so that you feel less noticeable. And like, I just think I think for parents, finding a behavior analyst who validates your truth and accepts your truth and works to address it in a way that's compassionate for your child as well.
Mhm.
It's like, and whatever, however that means. And that's why it's so hard for me to answer questions like that because I'm like, that's going to look different for every parent, every child, every behavior analyst.
Yeah. It's all individualized for everyone,
Yeah.
which is the
Yeah. I know it is. And that's what happens when you work with people and filled with people.
all right, guys. Well, this was such a great talk. We could talk all day. Nicole and I
I
are
know we really could.
you guys gotta if we were to release all the other things, we just have like all these ideas and like conversations we need to have with you guys. And like we talked about so many different things in just this amount of time, you know? And it's just us. So and also too, we're gonna have guest speakers on board too. So if you're
Yes.
the ABA, or parents or BCBA that like to pop on our show, or you have topics that you'd like for us to discuss or bring up, let us know.
Yes. Yes. And where can people find us, Christina?
So you can find us online on social media on Instagram at reinforcing.conversations. So it's reinforcing.conversations. And it's also reinforcing.conversations on YouTube and then also for our podcast.
Yes. So, and our email is rf.conversations@gmail.com.
Yes.
Yes. So reach out. We'd love to hear from you guys and stay tuned because we're going to be developing a whole community and we're really excited about this mission,
Yeah.
this journey.
Thank you so much, Nicole.
Yes, thank you. I love spending time with you, Christina. I feel like I learn so much about it's like therapy. I learn so much about myself.
It's like, wait a minute, I'm having an epiphany right now.
Yeah. It's gonna
It's
happen
just
every
like
time.
moments that we're gonna have. That's why we're
I
having
know.
conversations, right?
Yep. Yep. I think that's also like I listen to a lot of podcasts and it's been really interesting to listen to other people have their own journeys. And I'm like, wow, it really is like this public journey. So we're here for it. And hope everybody will join us.
They will.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you so
All right.
much. Talk soon. Bye.
Bye.